I'm making another video today about a bottle. Today's bottle is bottle 89, suggested by one of the comments in my Facebook when I introduced that I found this book again with ideas or words for each of the bottles up to bottle 90 in Orosoma. And so I'm looking at bottle 89 today. And in particular, I'm going to use two sentences and say a few extra words about it. And it's the first two sentences, the time shift and the energy rescue. However, I'm going to talk about them in a way that's not usual, but really interesting. And it's something I've only just discovered. And I'm going to be using a fair few long words, so you'll have to bear with me. We're going to be talking about the physical body. We're going to be talking about a hormone in the physical body called melatonin or melatonin. It's normally associated with the pineal gland, and it helps us to fall asleep at night. However, what I've discovered is that melatonin is not just used at night to help us to sleep, but is used throughout the daytime. And in fact, it's created in the body through the whole length of the day, as long as you're outside in the sunshine. And when you're outside in the sunshine, then you're not just receiving the light that we can see from red to violet, you're also absorbing photons, energy packets from light. You're also receiving photons which are outside of the visible spectrum. In particular, the photons that are just underneath the red part of the spectrum in what's called the near infrared. So you've got infrared is beneath red, and near infrared is near to the visible part of the spectrum. So it's the photons which are just past the color red as it disappears into darkness from the point of view of our seeing. So near infrared, very fitting. I was very surprised to learn that 70% of the photons from the sun are in that near infrared part of the spectrum. It's incredible. The electromagnetic spectrum is huge, from cosmic rays, X-rays, ultraviolet, through the visible spectrum, which is such a small part, infrared, microwaves, radio waves, all the way down to the end part, that end of the spectrum. Near infrared is such a tiny part, but 70% of the photons from the sun come in that part of the spectrum. And these photons, with this energy, this near infrared vibration, can be absorbed more deeply in the body than the photons which are visible through our eyes as part of visible light. So visible light doesn't penetrate too deeply in the body. It does a little bit, of course, because you've got the you can shine a torch through your finger and you'll see a bit of a pink glow. But these near infrared photons are absorbed more deeply. And in particular, the central nervous system, the cerebrospinal fluid, that's the fluid around in the spinal column in which the central nervous system is sitting, which then goes up into the brain. The brain is part of the central nervous system too. The fluid brings these photons up and bathes the brain in these photons. This light, we don't see the light, but it's the brain is being bathed in the energy of the sunlight. These photons. Now these photons, now we're talking about photons in the infrared part of the spectrum. Do you know what they're mostly absorbed, working with? The mitochondria in our cells. Our whole body is created of cells. Human cells by themselves do not create energy. We actually live with another organism, not part of the human genome, genetic code. It's another organism. It's called mitochondria. It's a life form which we live symbiotically with. We need the mitochondria. The mitochondria live within us in every cell of the body. They do us a favor because they allow us to produce energy rescue. These photons in the near infrared part of the spectrum are nourishing, feeding the mitochondria. Even in the brain, even in the darkness of the brain, we're being nourished by these photons stimulating the mitochondria. They do two things. Well, they probably do more things, but the mitochondria, it's a very so the hormone, it's too much information. I think what we need to know is that mitochondria create energy, but they also create something called melatonin, normally associated with the pineal gland, as I said, to help us sleep at night. But actually, 90% of our melatonin doesn't come from the pineal gland. It comes from the mitochondria. It's called subcellular within the cell, subcellular melatonin, as opposed to circulating melatonin, which goes through the bloodstream from the pineal gland and around the body. Subcellular is created in all the cells, but especially in through the mitochondria. Creates our energy, helps us to be active in the day, not just to rest at night. It's an energy rescue, which works on both sides of the time shift. I'm bringing time shift in, not for the normal Mayan calendar idea, which was the original meaning of time shift. I'm being kind of clever in a way. I'm using it for the time shift between nighttime and daytime. It's an energy rescue for nighttime, daytime time shift. And it's the infrared photons from the sun that are stimulating the melatonin, subcellular melatonin, which is going to help us to have energy and to help us transition from daytime, be active, to nighttime rest. That's maybe all I have to say about it, except one more interesting thing. Here's a picture. You see, one of the things that struck me, the reason I watched it, I learned this from another video, which I watched just earlier this week. So it's a very great synchronicity. And the title of the video was "The Brain is Bathed in Sunlight," which I thought was a lovely idea. And that's why I listened to the video. And now, if you look at this picture, which is from the Orosoma Tarot, bottle number 15, bottle number 15 looks like this. This is the idea of Plato's cave. And the idea of Plato's cave, the Greek philosopher Plato, he talked about this idea that by the way we're physically built, although there's light all around us in the outside world, we seem to live in our head. And our head has got this very dense bone, the skull, which creates a darkness inside our head. So even as we live in a world of light, we're kind of perceiving the world in our physical head, which is in darkness. So we are looking at the shadows on the wall of the cave. We're seeing the images of the world outside in our head through our eyes. We're seeing it in the darkness of the cave of our skull. But what I learned from this video is that the skull, inside the skull, the brain is bathed in light, in sunlight. It's just the infrared part of the sunlight. And then I thought, well, that's so interesting, because you've got here two ends of the spectrum, violet and red. Above violet, you have light, ultraviolet. Ultraviolet, if you look at ultraviolet, then the brain is in darkness. But if you look at infrared, then the brain is bathed in light. The light that allows the time shift, daytime to nighttime, our adjustment to daytime and then nighttime, and our nourishment of energy through the mitochondria. So that's not really fitting with what was meant, when the book was written. But I think it's a really fascinating new addition of information to support our interpretation of this bottle. And I would just extend that a little bit further. You could say that this bottle, Red Deep Magenta, is about a rescue for us being in the physical body. And being in the physical body means you're more attuned to your own rhythms and your own needs. When you're tired, you go to bed. When you wake up, you have energy because you rested properly. If you're living in your head, if you're working in a different rhythm, if you're watching blue screens all day long and therefore not in the sunlight, you're not getting those important infrared photons, which are helping you to create the melatonin so you can be adjusted to the nighttime, daytime cycle. So it's really, really important for us to be as much as possible out there in the sun, which is where I'm going next, so that we can, you know, what the ancient part of our physical body is: melatonin, mitochondria, our cellular base. These are the fundamentals which the soul incarnates into and lives within this vehicle of the physical body. This red deep magenta is a rescue for being in the physical body, a rescue for being grounded in the physical body. And in a way, this mechanism I'm talking about with you today is really a mechanism about how we live in harmony with the world around us. We are energized and healthily functioning in our nighttime, daytime cycle, and living in our body on the earth. So that's where it all comes down in the end. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be making another video tomorrow. And until then, bye-bye.